Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how are you today? In today's video, I'm going to tell you about an email that I got from a subscriber that I talk to all the time, and she's really awesome. Um, she brought something to my attention that, was very, very interesting. And it's, why does the US always seem so behind compared to Russia when it comes to missiles and anti-ship missiles and cruise missiles and things like this? And she did a little bit of research, and this is what she found. So I'm going to read to you what she found, okay? And it's really like, wow, you wouldn't think, right? So this is it. I'm just going to read it to you, okay? Um, there's a man by the name of Richard Redman, and he lives in the United States of America. And he said this: the U.S. is so far behind Russia in terms of SAMs, anti-ship missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, because it took its eye off the ball. The U.S. spent the last 20 years focusing on counterinsurgency in Iraq and Afghanistan. Over the past 20 years, the American Corps has been focusing on the wars that they have been fighting. As such, they spent a significant amount of their R&D budget developing and procuring systems that would help them fight those wars better. The U.S. military spent its R&D budget on systems like MRAPs instead of cruise missiles and air defense systems, believing those systems to be adequate. Modern day MRAPs like the International Max Pro cost as much as $550,000 apiece. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Pentagon acquired approximately 25,000 MRAPs. By contrast, Russian cruise missiles like the P-800 cost about $1.2 million apiece, or around twice as much. In the event of a major conflict, MRAPs would not be much more useful than the Humvees that they were purchased to supersede, while advanced cruise missiles like the P-800 could take out capital ships like the destroyers or the cruisers. International Max Pro MRAP. BrahMos, BrahMos, P-800. Secondly, the U.S. was complacent. The U.S. Navy is by far the largest Navy in the world. The U.S. Navy currently has 11 aircraft carriers, 9 amphibious assault ships, 22 cruisers, and 68 destroyers in service. Only now is the Chinese Navy emerging with a fraction of that capability. U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke class destroyers were far superior to any other ships afloat 20 years ago when the U.S. began the War on Terror. American defense planners rested on the laurels because they believed that America had such a qualitative and quantitative edge in combat ships that it would be decades before any nation would be able to challenge their carrier strike groups. Officers who had risen through the ranks in the surface warfare and naval aviation branches simply did not want to admit that in a few short years, the survivability of their expensive ships would be brought into question by the proliferation and hypersonic and supersonic anti-ship missiles. Instead of focusing on getting ahead of the curve, the U.S. Navy continued to focus on large and increasingly vulnerable ships, largely out of institutional bias and a desire to save jobs. Lastly, the USAF made the conscious decision to focus on fighter jets over cruise missiles and air defense systems, much like the U.S. Navy with regards to big ships. The U.S. Air Force has a strong institutional bias towards fighter jets. The U.S. chose not to focus on developing air defenses because current U.S. defense doctrine assumes that U.S. fighters would never have their ability to base safely off to the battlefield contested. U.S. defense planners believed that the U.S. would always maintain air superiority for as long as its Air Force would continue to retain qualitativity and quantitatively superiority over any potential adversary. As such, the USAF spent much of its budget that could have gone into developing more advanced cruise missiles on the lackluster F-35, hoping that it would be able to maintain the USAF edge. While both Russia and China have made steady progress in improving the quality of their fighter jets, both nations have placed a priority on the developing cruise and ballistic missiles to deny the ability to base them near the event of a war. Current Russian military doctrine envisions using systems like the Iskander and the Kalibr, Kalibr, missiles to knock out U.S. air bases in the opening hours of a war, destroying the U.S. fighter fleet on the ground. As with the Navy, the USAF was behind the ball on the way with regards to how the nature of war was changing due to their institutional bias towards fighters. They failed to recognize that air bases were becoming increasingly vulnerable to long-range, precision-guided munitions. Failing to recognize this threat, the USAF chose not to invest heavily in air defense systems designed to protect air bases from these munitions. Following Desert Storm, the Russians recognized the threat that long-range precision-guided munitions posed to key installations like air and naval bases and invested heavily in air defense systems like the S-400 to protect them. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate these types of emails, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, stay positive, keep prepping, and as always, fear less.